Commander Zeleth stood on the bridge of her ship, staring at the blue planet below. She had been doing this job for 20 years, welcoming new species into the galactic communion. It was supposed to be simple. Every species that developed radio technology received the invitation within their first 50 years of broadcasting. Every single one responded within months. The pattern had held true for 3 million years across 10,000 different worlds, but Earth was different. The humans had invented radio more than 200 years ago by galactic standard time. They had satellites. They had television. They had powerful telescopes scanning the stars. They should have received the invitation decades ago. They should have responded by now. Yet there was nothing. Complete silence. Run the diagnostic again, Zeleth said to her communications officer. A young Trell named Mozek. Mozek's scales shifted to a frustrated purple color. Commander, I've run it 23 times now. Our transmission systems are working perfectly. The invitation is broadcasting on 47,000 different frequencies. We are using every possible method of communication. There's no way they could miss it. Zeleth clicked her mandibles together, a sign of deep thought among her people. She walked to the main view screen and zoomed in on Earth. She could see the lights of human cities glowing on the dark side of the planet. She could detect thousands of radio signals coming from the surface. The humans were clearly capable of receiving transmissions, so why weren't they responding? Pull up their communication history, she ordered. The screen filled with data. Human radio broadcasts going back to centuries. Television signals. Satellite communications. Even some deliberate messages sent into space, aimed at other star systems. The humans knew about the possibility of alien life. They were actively looking for it. Look at this, Mozek said, highlighting a signal from 1977. They detected something unusual. They called it the WOW signal. Their scientists studied it for years. Zeleth leaned closer. The signal pattern looked familiar. Very familiar. That's us. That's part of the invitation. But they didn't recognize it, Mozek replied. They thought it was just a random astronomical phenomenon. They never realized someone was trying to talk to them. Zeleth pulled up more data. There were other instances. Strange signals that human scientists had detected and dismissed. Patterns in cosmic radiation that didn't quite make sense. All of them fragments of the invitation, broken and distorted. Something is interfering with our transmission, she said slowly. Show me Earth's magnetic field. As the image appeared on screen. Earth's magnetosphere was unusual, stronger than expected for a planet its size. The solar wind bent around it in complex patterns. Zeleth ran a simulation, modeling how their transmission would interact with that field. The results made her freeze. By the void, she whispered. The field is refracting our signals. Everything we send gets scattered and distorted before it reaches the surface. They're not ignoring us. They can't hear us properly. Mozek's scales turned pale blue with shock. How is that possible? We've contacted species on thousands of worlds with magnetic fields. Not like this one. Earth's iron core is massive. Combined with their sun's activity, it creates a unique distortion pattern. It's like trying to talk to someone underwater. Some sound gets through, but it's gibberish. Zeleth sat down heavily in her command chair. This had never happened before. In 3 million years of the communion reaching out to new species, they had never encountered a world that was naturally shielded from the invitation. What do we do, Commander? Mozek asked. It was a good question. The protocols were clear. The communion only made contact with species that responded to the invitation. It was the foundation of everything they did. First, the new species had to prove they were ready by recognizing the mathematical proof of friendship embedded in the invitation. Then they had to respond, showing they understood the basic concepts of peaceful communication. But the humans had never received a clear invitation. Through no fault of their own, they had been isolated by an accident of physics. We observe, Zeleth said finally. We watch and wait. Maybe they'll develop technology that can bypass the distortion. Maybe they'll figure out what's blocking communication and fix it themselves. And if they don't, Zeleth didn't have an answer for that. Down on Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen was having a very different kind of problem. She was sitting in a meeting room full of administrators, fighting to save her research project from budget cuts. The Arecibo message project is important, she argued. We're trying to make contact with alien civilizations. This is literally the most significant endeavor in human history. A man in an expensive suit shook his head. Dr. Chen, we've been broadcasting into space for 100 years. We've been listening even longer. Nothing has ever answered. It's time to accept that we might be alone. Can't give up, Sarah insisted. The universe is too big for us to be the only intelligent life. We just need to keep trying. Another administrator sighed. The money could go to practical research, medicine, engineering, things that help people now, not hypothetical aliens that might not exist. Sarah felt panic rising in her chest. She had dedicated her life to this work. The idea of humanity giving up on finding others in the universe felt wrong on a fundamental level. What if I could generate public interest? She said quickly. What if I could get private funding? We could create a new transmission, something better than the original Arecibo message. We could include modern science, culture, art, make it interesting enough that people want to support it. The administrators looked at each other. If you can secure private funding, we won't shut you down, one of them said. But you have 6 months. If you can't make it self-sufficient by then, the project ends. 6 months. Sarah could work with that. She spent the next weeks planning. The original Arecibo message from 1974 had been simple. Just 1,679 bits of basic information. Sarah wanted to send something comprehensive. A real introduction to humanity. She assembled a team. Musicians, artists, scientists, historians, filmmakers. They would create a package that showed what humans were really like. Not just our achievements, but our culture, our diversity, our complexity. We're going to send everything, she told her team at their first meeting. Music from every culture. Images of Earth, videos of daily life, scientific data, mathematical proofs. Art from across human history. We're going to show whoever's out there exactly who we are. Young programmer named Marcus raised his hand. Dr. Chen, that's going to be a massive data package. We're talking petabytes of information. It'll take tremendous power to transmit. Then we'll upgrade our systems, Sarah said. We'll find a way. She didn't know that her project would change everything. She didn't know that above her planet. A frustrated alien commander was waiting for a response that would never come. She didn't know that humanity was about to ignore the carefully crafted invitation of 10,000 species and send something completely different instead. All she knew was that humans had been calling out to the stars for over a century, hoping someone would answer, and she was going to make sure that call was loud enough to be heard. It took Sarah and her team 8 months to prepare the transmission. The budget committee had given her 6, but she had managed to secure enough private funding to keep going. A handful of wealthy tech entrepreneurs who believed in the search for alien life had stepped in. They liked her vision of sending a complete picture of humanity into space. The amount of data grew far beyond what Sarah had originally planned. Her team was enthusiastic, constantly suggesting new additions. A jazz musician wanted to include recordings from New Orleans. An Indian dancer sent videos of traditional performances. School children from 50 countries contributed drawings and messages. Scientists added recent discoveries in physics and biology. We're up to 1.7 petabytes, Marcus told her, looking worried. Dr. Chen, this is going to take an enormous amount of power to transmit. And it's so much information. Maybe we should cut it down? Sarah looked at the collection of files. Music from Beethoven and Beatles, traditional songs from tribes in Africa and Australia, images of the Grand Canyon and Tokyo streets, videos of births and weddings and funerals, scientific papers and children's books, footage of wars and peace treaties, paintings and sculptures and poetry. It was messy. It was contradictory. It was human. No, she said. We send all of it. If anyone is listening, they should know who we really are. Not some cleaned-up, perfect version. The real thing. The transmission was scheduled for a Tuesday in March. Sarah barely slept the night before. She kept thinking about the possibility that someone might actually receive this. Someone might learn about Earth and decide to respond, or maybe no one would hear it. Maybe humanity really was alone. She pushed that thought away. The Arecibo array powered up at exactly 10 a.m. The massive dish aimed at a cluster of star systems 45 light-years away. Systems that scientists thought might have habitable planets. "Transmission beginning," Marcus announced. The powerful beam of radio waves launched into space, carrying 1.7 petabytes of human culture, science, and history. It punched through Earth's atmosphere, through the layers of satellites and space debris, and out into the void. What Sarah didn't realize was that the beam also punched straight through the magnetospheric distortion that had been scattering every other signal for 200 years. The sheer power and focused nature of the transmission forced its way through the interference like a knife through cloth on her ship above Earth. Zeleth was reviewing supply reports when every alarm on the bridge started screaming at once. Mosek shouted, "We're detecting a massive directed transmission from the surface. It's cutting through the magnetic distortion." Zeleth jumped to her feet. "The humans? They're finally responding to the invitation?" "No, Commander." Mosek's scales flickered with confusion. "It's not a response. It's something else entirely. They're transmitting to a different star system, and the data volume is enormous. I've never seen anything like this in a first contact situation." Zeleth stared at the analysis appearing on her screens. The humans had sent a directed, powerful message into space, but they hadn't aimed it at any of the communion monitoring stations. They hadn't acknowledged the invitation at all. They had just decided to broadcast on their own. "Download everything," she ordered, "and send a priority alert to Communion Central. The humans just made first contact with themselves." The data took hours to download and begin analyzing. As the content started to become clear, Zeleth felt increasingly confused. The humans had sent images of war, actual warfare, showing weapons and destruction and death. What species advertises their capacity for violence in a first contact message? But they had also sent images of hospitals, of humans helping each other, of rescue workers saving people from disasters. They sent music that ranged from simple folk songs to complex symphonies, too aggressive loud music that made Zeleth's audio sensors hurt. They sent scientific papers showing both brilliant discoveries and acknowledgments of how much they didn't understand. They sent religious texts from dozens of different belief systems, many of which contradicted each other. "This makes no sense," Mosek said, reviewing the data alongside her. "Why would they show us their disagreements? Their weaknesses? Their violence?" Zeleth didn't have an answer. By the end of the day, the transmission had been forwarded to Communion Central. Within hours, analysts on 10,000 worlds were trying to make sense of what humanity had sent. The Communion's artificial intelligence systems, designed to analyze alien communications and find patterns, kept crashing. The data was too contradictory. Humans appeared to be simultaneously aggressive and peaceful, logical and emotional, selfish and generous. The AI couldn't create a coherent profile. On the third day after the transmission, Zeleth received a message from Communion Central. She was ordered to present her analysis to the full council. This was unprecedented. The council usually only met for major crisis situations. Apparently, humanity qualified as a major crisis. Zeleth prepared her report carefully. She knew the council would want answers, and she had very few to give. Meanwhile, on Earth, Sarah Chen was celebrating. The transmission had gone perfectly. Her team was excited. The media coverage had been excellent. Public interest in the search for alien life had jumped significantly. Several major corporations had pledged funding for future transmissions. "We should send another one in 6 months," suggested Maria, one of the project coordinators. "Maybe aim at a different cluster of stars." Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. And we can include updated information, new discoveries, more cultural content." Marcus was less optimistic. "Dr. Chen, do you really think anyone received it?" 45 light years means we won't get a response for 90 years, even if someone is there and answers immediately. I know, Sarah said, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that we tried. We reached out. We told the universe that humanity exists and we want to connect. She walked to the window of her office and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, maybe someone was listening. Maybe someone would hear humanity's message and respond. She had no idea that 10,000 civilizations had just heard her transmission. She had no idea that humanity's chaotic. Contradictory, honest message was causing the biggest debate in galactic history. She had no idea that by ignoring the invitation, she never received and sending her own message instead. She had just changed the course of human history. All she knew was that, for the first time in a century of searching, humanity had sent a message that truly represented who they were. And somewhere in the universe, someone might actually be listening. The council chamber of the Galactic Communion was enormous, built to accommodate representatives from 10,000 different species. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some saw invisible light, others in infrared or radio waves. Some communicated through sound, others through color changes or chemical signals. The chamber was a marvel of technology, allowing all these different beings to meet and communicate as equals. Right now, that chamber was in chaos. They sent us images of warfare. Ambassador Thresh slammed his armored appendage against his podium. The Corthians were a warrior species who had given up violence millennia ago after joining the Communion. Thresh found the human transmission deeply disturbing. Actual combat footage. Weapons designed to kill their own kind. This is not appropriate for first contact. Scholar Prime Ether the Luminaries flashed a soft blue glow, their species' version of a gentle disagreement. They also sent images of healing, of cooperation, of art and music and love. Yes, they included violence, but they included everything else too. That's the problem, said Representative Quilks of the Hive Mind Collective. There is no coherence, no unified message. How can a species function when individuals have such different beliefs and behaviors? Zelith stood at the center podium, trying to maintain order. This was her first time presenting to the full council, and it was not going well. If I may, she said loudly, the humans are not aware of communion protocols. They never received the invitation properly due to their planet's magnetic field. They don't know there is a standard procedure for first contact. Then why did they transmit at all? Demanded a representative from the Crystalline Collective. If they didn't know anyone was listening, why send such a massive amount of data? Because they hoped, said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned. It was Keeper Voth, one of the oldest members of the Communion. Her species lived for thousands of years, and Voth personally remembered first contact with over 300 civilizations. She rarely spoke in council sessions, but when she did, people listened. "Explain, Keeper," said the council leader. Voth moved slowly to a secondary podium. I have spent 3 days reviewing the human transmission in detail. I have also studied their history, their broadcasts, their culture. What I see is a species that has been alone their entire existence. Completely alone. No neighboring aliens. No cosmic community. Nothing but silence when they looked at the stars. She manipulated the display, showing Earth floating in space. They developed radio over 200 years ago, and almost immediately, they started listening for others. They built telescopes. They sent messages. They searched. For 2 centuries, they have been calling out, hoping someone would answer. And they never heard anything back. The chamber was quiet now, everyone listening. Despite the silence, Voth continued. Despite having no evidence that anyone was out there, they kept trying. The transmission we received was not their first. They have been sending messages for decades. This was just the most comprehensive one. She changed the display to show various pieces of the human transmission. A child's drawing of humans and aliens holding hands. A piece of music filled with longing. A scientific paper speculating about alien life. A video of an old man looking at stars and crying. They are scared that they are alone in the universe, Voth said softly. And they sent us everything about themselves because they wanted whoever might be listening to truly know them. Not a diplomatic fiction. Not a carefully constructed image. The truth. Ambassador Thresh's aggressive posture softened slightly. That is why they included their violence. They were being honest? More than that, Voth replied. Look at this. She showed footage of human wars, followed immediately by footage of peace treaties. They're showing us that they are capable of violence, yes, but also capable of overcoming it. They're not hiding their flaws. They're showing us that they struggle with them and sometimes succeed. A Trell analyst named Sorix raised a tentacle. I have been studying their cultural data. They included religious texts from 12 different belief systems. Many of these texts contradict each other. Some claim there is one God, others many gods, others no gods at all. Yet humans with these different beliefs live together on the same planet. They fight about it sometimes, noted another analyst. Yes, Sorix agreed. But they also cooperate. There are cities where dozens of different belief systems coexist. They argue, but they don't destroy each other over their differences. At least, not always. The council leader spoke. What are we to make of a species that is so internally divided, yet still functions? Voth manipulated the display again. I have a theory. Every species in this communion developed on worlds where they encountered other intelligent species relatively early. The Korthians met 3 other species on their home planet. The Luminaries shared their world with 2. Even species that evolved alone eventually detected alien radio signals. Within a few decades of developing the technology themselves, she highlighted Earth again. The humans had no one. They are the only intelligent species on their planet. They have no recent evidence of alien life anywhere. They developed in complete isolation. So instead of learning cooperation by meeting others, they had to learn it among themselves. They are divided into thousands of groups, but they're all human. They had to figure out how to live together despite their differences. That explains the contradiction, Zeleth said, understanding dawning. They're not a unified species making first contact. They're thousands of subgroups, all human, all trying to speak for humanity as a whole. Exactly, Voth confirmed. And they sent everything because every group wanted to be represented. They didn't want whoever received this to know just one human perspective. They wanted us to know all of them. The chamber fell into contemplative silence. Finally, Ambassador Thresh spoke again. I withdraw my objection. This is not a display of violence. This is a display of honesty. They are showing us they are flawed and know it. But not everyone was convinced. They are too chaotic, said Representative Morven of the Ordered Systems Alliance. How can we trust a species that can't even agree among themselves about basic questions of existence? How can we not trust them? Countered Scholar Primeth. They're telling us the truth. Every other species in this chamber sent carefully crafted responses to the invitation. We all followed the protocol. We all presented our best faces. The humans didn't know there was a protocol, so they just sent themselves. Raw and real. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives argued that humanity was too unpredictable, too violent, too chaotic to be contacted. Others argued that humanity's honesty was exactly why they should be welcomed. Data. Analysts kept finding new details in the transmission that supported both sides. Humans created beautiful art, but they also created weapons. They showed incredible compassion, but also terrible cruelty. They were brilliant scientists, but many believed in things that had no scientific basis. In a side chamber, a team of xenopsychologists were having their own intense discussion. I've never seen anything like this, said Dr. Venth, a specialist in first contact psychology. Usually species that develop advanced technology have resolved most of their internal conflicts. They've achieved some level of social cohesion. But humans are still fighting among themselves while simultaneously reaching for the stars. Maybe that's the point, suggested another psychologist. Maybe they reach for the stars because they haven't resolved everything. They're looking for something bigger than their own conflicts. Back in the main chamber, the council leader called for attention. This debate could continue for years, they said, but we need to make a decision. The humans have made contact whether they knew we were here or not. We cannot unlearn what we now know about them. The question is simple. Do we respond, or do we quarantine them? If we quarantine them, Voth said, we tell them that the universe has nothing but silence. We confirm their worst fear, that they are alone. If we respond, countered Morven, we expose the communion to an unpredictable species. We risk our peace. The council leader looked around the chamber. We will vote. But first, is there any new information that should be considered? A junior analyst from the Earth monitoring station raised a hesitant hand. Actually, yes. The humans are transmitting again, many times. It's not just the one message. It's dozens now, hundreds. They're not waiting for a response. They just keep sending. Council leader blinked. Show us. The displays filled with new transmissions from Earth. Radio telescopes around the planet were sending their own messages. Some were from scientists. Others were from ordinary citizens. Children's schools were sending class projects. Artists were sending their work. Random people were just sending greetings. One message from a 10-year-old girl in India was particularly striking. Dear aliens, I hope you're real. I hope you're nice. My teacher says we might be alone, but I don't think so. The universe is too big for just us. If you get this, can you send something back? Anything, even just, hello. Love, Priya. The chamber was silent as the message finished playing. Finally, Ambassador Thresh stood. I changed my vote, he announced. Already? The council leader asked. Yes, we contact them immediately. Thresh gestured to the display showing Priya's message. Because that child deserves an answer. The vote was scheduled for 3 days later, giving all council members time to review the complete human transmission and prepare their positions. Those 3 days saw the most intense political maneuvering in communion history. Zelith found herself at the center of it all. As the officer who had been monitoring Earth, she was considered the expert on humanity. Representatives from hundreds of species came to her with questions, arguments, and theories. Tell me, said Ambassador Koresh of the Peaceful Unity, are the humans aggressive? Will they be a threat to the communion? Zelith pulled up footage of human military operations. Tanks rolling across deserts. Soldiers in combat. Nuclear weapons being tested. They have the capacity for violence, yes. They still maintain large military forces. They have weapons capable of destroying their own planet. Koresh's energy field dimmed with concern. Then we must quarantine them. But wait, Zelith continued. She showed different footage. Human soldiers helping civilians. Military doctors treating wounded enemies. Armies working together to provide disaster relief. They also used their military forces for humanitarian purposes. And look at this, she highlighted a document. These are their international laws regarding warfare. They have rules about how to conduct combat, about treating prisoners, about protecting civilians. They don't always follow these rules, but they created them. They regulate their own violence. Koresh seemed confused. They tried to Zelith confirmed. They don't always succeed, but they're aware of their capacity for harm, and they actively work to limit it. Similar conversations were happening across the communion. Representatives were discovering that every simple question about humanity had a complicated answer. Were humans peaceful? Sometimes, were they violent? Sometimes, were they rational? Sometimes, were they emotional? Sometimes, the hive mind representatives were particularly confused by human individualism. How do they make collective decisions when every individual thinks differently? They asked. The answer seemed to be, with great difficulty and lots of arguing, the long-lived species worried about human short lifespans. They only live about 100 years, many of them much less. How can they think long-term? But the data showed that humans did think long-term. They planted trees they would never see grow. They built monuments to last millennia. They worried about problems their great-great-grandchildren might face. Their brief lives seemed to make them more urgent about leaving something behind, not less. Meanwhile, on Earth, Sarah Chen had no idea she had started an interstellar political crisis. She was busy planning the next transmission. We're getting amazing response from the public, Maria told her. Schools want to participate. Artists from around the world are sending submissions. We have enough content for 5 more transmissions. That's wonderful, Sarah said. She was reviewing a message from a group of students in Brazil who wanted to send samba music and information about rainforest conservation. Let's include all of it. The more diverse our messages, the better. Marcus looked worried. Dr. Chen, are you sure we should keep doing this? We haven't gotten any response. Maybe we should wait? Wait for what? Sarah asked. We've been waiting for over a century. Someone might be listening. Someone might respond someday. But even if they don't, at least we tried. At least we said, here we are. This is humanity. We exist. She didn't know that someone was definitely listening. She didn't know that 10,000 civilizations were arguing about whether to respond. Back at the Communion, Keepavoth was doing research. She had a theory, but she needed to confirm it. She accessed the historical archives. Looking at records of every first contact in Communion history, what she found was fascinating. Every single species had responded to the invitation within months of receiving it. Every response had followed a similar pattern. Acknowledgement of the message. Basic information about the species. Expression of peaceful intent. Request for further communication. The responses were polite, diplomatic, carefully structured, and completely lacking in personality. Voth pulled up the first contact message from her own species. Sent over 2,000 years ago. It was proper, respectful, boring. She compared it to the human transmission. Music that made her feel emotions she couldn't name. Images of such beauty and such horror that she had to take breaks while reviewing them. Videos of humans laughing, crying, fighting, loving, creating, destroying. The human message was overwhelming. It was too much. It was exhausting. It was also the most alive thing she had ever seen. She prepared a presentation for the council. On the day of the vote, the chamber was more crowded than Zeleth had ever seen it. Representatives from all 10,000 species were present, along with thousands of observers and analysts. The decision about humanity was being treated as historically significant. The council leader called the session to order. We are here to vote on whether to make formal contact with the human species of Earth. Before we vote, Keeper Voth has requested to speak. Voth took the center podium. I have reviewed every first contact in our history, she began. All 10,000 of them. I have compared them to the human transmission, and I have discovered something troubling. The chamber went quiet. We are stagnant, Voth said simply. For 3 million years, the Communion has been growing. We add new species regularly. We share technology and knowledge. We maintain peace across the galaxy. These are magnificent achievements. But we are not growing anymore. We are only expanding. She brought up examples on the display. Every species that joins the Communion follows the same path. They receive the invitation. They respond properly. We teach them our ways. They integrate into our society. They become like us. Is that not the point? Asked a representative. Is it? Voth challenged. When was the last time a new species brought us something truly different? When was the last time someone challenged our assumptions? When was the last time we were surprised? She showed the human transmission again. The humans surprised us. They ignored our invitation, not out of arrogance, but because they never received it. They sent their own message instead. They didn't follow our protocol because they didn't know there was one. And in doing so, they showed us something we had forgotten. What? Asked the council leader. That first contact can be genuine, Voth said. That a species can introduce themselves without pretense or diplomacy. The humans are flawed. They're contradictory. They're chaotic, but they are real. They sent us their authentic selves. Can any of us say we did the same? The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives were offended by the suggestion. Others seemed thoughtful. Ambassador Thresh stood. The keeper is right. When my people joined the Communion, we sent a careful message, emphasizing our commitment to peace. We did not mention that we had spent the previous 1,000 years in constant warfare. We hid our violent history because we thought it would disqualify us. Other representatives began speaking up, admitting similar things. Species that had hidden their flaws emphasized their achievements. presented idealized versions of themselves during first contact. The humans didn't do that, Thresh continued. They showed us everything, their best and their worst. They trusted us to see them as they truly are. That takes courage, Scholar Primeath added. They also demonstrated something else. They have been sending messages into space for decades, receiving no response, yet they keep trying. That is not the behavior of a species that gives up easily. That is determination. The debate continued for hours. Arguments for and against contact were made passionately on both sides. Finally, Representative Morven stood. He had been the strongest voice for quarantine. I have a question for Keeper Voth. If we vote for quarantine, what happens to the humans? They continue in isolation, Voth replied. We monitor them from a distance. We do not respond to their transmissions. Eventually, after a few more decades of silence, they may stop trying to make contact. They may conclude they are alone, and if we vote for contact, then we respond. We introduce ourselves. We welcome them to the communion, and we accept whatever chaos they bring with them. Morven was quiet for a long moment. I have spent 3 days reviewing their transmission. There was a video that disturbed me deeply. Human war, causing tremendous suffering. But after showing us the war, they showed us the peace treaty that ended it. And then they showed us a memorial built at the battlefield, where descendants of enemies now meet as friends. He looked around the chamber. They are showing us that they learn from their mistakes, that they can change. If we quarantine them because they are flawed, we tell them that flaws are unforgivable. We tell them that struggling is worse than pretending to be perfect. You are changing your position? The council leader asked. Yes, Morven said firmly. I vote for contact. The council leader looked surprised, but pleased. Then let us vote. All in favor of initiating formal contact with humanity? The chamber filled with lights, sounds, and signals as representatives voted. Zelith watched the count, holding her breath. When it finished, the result was unanimous. 10,000 species had just decided to answer humanity's call. The communion moved quickly once the decision was made. A response team was assembled, led by Keeper Voth and Commander Zelith. Their task was to craft a reply that humanity would understand and appreciate. We cannot send the standard invitation response, Voth explained to the team. The humans did not send us a standard message. We must match their authenticity with our own. The team included linguists, cultural specialists, artists, scientists, and diplomats from 50 different species. They spent 2 days reviewing everything humanity had sent, trying to understand what kind of response would be meaningful. They sent us music, noted a Vrel musician. We should send them music too. Music from across the communion. They sent images of their world, added a visual specialist. We should show them ours. They sent science and culture together, observed a Trell scholar. They did not separate them. We should do the same. Slowly, a response took shape. Music from 10,000 worlds. Images of 1,000 different alien species. Mathematical proofs and artistic expressions. Videos of daily life on planets across the galaxy. And at the center of it all, a simple message. Crafting that message was the hardest part. It needed to be translated into every human language. It needed to convey welcome without being condescending. It needed to acknowledge what humanity had shared without being overwhelming. Dr. Venth, the xenopsychologist, made a suggestion. The humans included a message from a child named Priya. She asked for a simple response. Hello, she said. Anything, even just hello. We should address her directly, Zelith realized.
Doctor.
Chen, the scientist who sent the original transmission, should acknowledge specific humans by name. Show only listen to individuals, not just their species. It took another day to finalize the message. When it was complete, Voth reviewed it one last time. This is good, she said. This feels right. Not perfect, but genuine. The humans will appreciate that. The transmission was prepared, but there was one more problem to solve, Commander Mozek reported. We still cannot send a clear signal through Earth's magnetic distortion. The humans' original transmission only worked because it was incredibly powerful and directed. Our signal will scatter just like the invitation did. Zelith thought about this. What if we use the frequency parameters from Dr. Chen's transmission? She must have found a way to punch through the distortion. Can we analyze her signal and replicate it? The technical team worked through the night. Finally, they found it. Sarah's transmission had used a specific combination of frequency and power that bypassed the magnetic interference. The communion could use the same approach. Prepare to transmit, Zeleth ordered. On all human frequencies, using Dr. Chen's parameters, make sure every radio telescope on Earth receives this simultaneously.
Aye.
The response was,